Hey there, everybody. Lewis Collins here, ERA Old South Properties, just bringing you another quick update. Just wanted to mention kind of a scenario that I recently encountered while being out with some buyers. Right now, I have the great opportunity to be representing a few first-time home buyers, and as you can imagine, there's some additional steps that you have to go through with first-time home buyers, just in the whole kind of educating them about the process and helping them along to understand the requirements of contracts, dates, times, EMD, the money aspect, and so on and so forth. So I have a very comprehensive program that allows first-time home buyers to feel very much at ease. I set up where I help them with the entire negotiation process, set up showings, help to set up and schedule inspections once we get under contract, walk them through the entire process from, start to finish when it comes to, EMD deposit all the way until they get to closing and get to sign their papers. So that's not a problem. The question that came up, and it's a very good question actually, is you as the buyer's agent, how do you get paid? And I think we as agents kind of just go through the process without really helping to allow our buyers to understand how we get compensated unless they outright ask it. And to me, this is kind of doing a disservice to our buyers, because the entire time, they may be sitting there thinking, I have a great relationship with this agent. He's helping me out, or she's helping me out so much, and they're doing such a bang up job, but I don't know how they're going to get paid. And quite frankly, as a first-time home buyer, there's more times than not, you don't have a ton of cash set aside for that first home purchase. So you're going to be using something like, first-time home buyer incentives, lower down payment loan, or something along those lines. So it kind of helps to put the buyer's mind at ease when we're able to have that conversation with them and sit down and say, hey, this is how I act throughout this process, and this is what you owe me during the entire process and for my services. So, of course, the big question is, how much do you get paid as a buyer's agent from a buyer? And in very few circumstances will this not be the case, and the correct answer is zero. So the way it works for any kind of first-time home buyers, or somebody that may be getting into the market and you're not really familiar with how the real estate transaction process works, what happens is when an agent goes out and lists a home, they will sign an exclusive right to sell contract. And what they will put in there is their commission that they're charging to sell that home. So for example, if it's 5% or 6%, they would put that as payment to them for their services in marketing that property. Now, with that marketing comes the entry into the MLS, or the multiple listing service, that is local to that agent's county, geographic area, whatever the case may be, however big it is for where they're working. And what they'll do is they will enter in a cooperating broker split for the buyer's agent. So in some cases, it'll be half their commission. In some cases, it'll be a little bit less, because there are costs incurred with marketing over and above what you would incur if you are a buyer's agent. But what they'll enter in there is that cooperating broker split. So for example, if they have a 6% commission to sell that home and they enter in 3% for a cooperating broker, I, or anyone as a buyer's agent that brings the buyer, a ready, willing, and able buyer that consummates the transaction, earns that commission that is advertised in the MLS. So as a buyer, they're not really privy to that information, because it's typically something that only the agent sees. At least for my MLS it is. We have agent-specific views that allow us to see, additional notes, the commission split, and some other information, not necessarily pertinent to the sale, but pertinent to, like showing instructions or whatever, that the buyer doesn't see. So in that, we'll know how much the cooperating broker split is, but the buyer doesn't. So you as a buyer, you basically don't have to worry about coming up with, a big fat check at closing to pay your broker or your real estate agent who's driving around, showing you houses, spending time, spending gas, taking you out to lunch if it were the case, on for their services. So you can kind of sit back, rest easy, and know that at the end of the day, the seller is actually paying your buyer agent commission. Now that may raise the question, okay, well, if the seller's paying the listing agent and the seller's paying the buyer's agent, would that not create a conflict of interest, because basically one party to the transaction is paying both of the professionals throughout the process? Well, in Florida, we have what's called transaction broker representation. So we as the agent are actually acting on behalf of the transaction. And I won't get into the details about, the different aspects of a transaction broker representation. There's a lot of legalese and stuff, and obviously not having a license to practice law, I'm not going to get into all the documents. But essentially what we're doing is working towards the fulfillment of the transaction. So having a buyer, I'm working for their side to fulfill the transaction, and the listing agent having a seller, they're looking to fulfill their side of the transaction. So when they come together, you have a completed purchase or a completed sale, however you want to look at it. And there's no, cross-representation, if you want to consider it that way. I, as the buyer's agent, if I'm acting as the buyer's agent, am only communicating with my buyer and the other realtor in order to set up inspections, take care of, lender requirements throughout the loan process, make sure my buyer's getting all the documentation to their lender, making sure that they're staying on top of their time frames, getting insurance quotes, requesting repairs, all those different scenarios when you're on the buyer side. On the listing side, that agent is communicating with their seller in order to make sure that any repair requests are being done properly and in a timely manner, that they are fulfilling the portion of their contract agreement when it comes to providing clear marketable title, if they have a survey that's available and they have to provide it, those sorts of things. Just going through and making sure that each party is fulfilling their side of the contract based on the initial negotiations. So again, there's no conflict of interest there, and as a buyer, you can know that your fees for using the services of that real estate agent are cut down to nothing, a big fat zero. Now, there are some instances, and very select instances, where you will sign a buyer broker representation to go show a specific property that may not be listed or is a for sale by owner or something like that, where you may be agreeing to sign a commission agreement so that you're paying your buyer agent. But that's in a very select few cases, and more times than not, it's if you're finding or you're searching for a very specific type of property, and you'll know what you're signing. It's typically not going to be in your everyday transaction, especially not for first-time home buyer scenarios. Very few and far between. So just a quick update on how a buyer pays their realtor. Now, keep in mind, buyers, as a real estate agent going around and showing you properties, obviously their service has to be top-notch. You don't deserve anything less than a top-notch real estate agent when you're buying a property. So communication, effective listening, making sure that they're understanding what you are looking for in a home, taking you to the right properties, being available to answer questions, being available to show those properties, having a good network of inspection companies, insurance companies, title companies, so on and so forth. That is kind of a prerequisite to them actually starting the process with you. So look out for those. But at the same time, if they show these characteristics and are personable, are service-oriented, and are providing these services to you, keep in mind, if you don't close, they don't get paid. So be very mindful when it comes to picking out your agent. Of course, you want to interview some agents, make sure that they're going to do the best work the best work they can based on your expectations, but also make sure that you have a good relationship with them. So at the end of the day, not only are you wanting them to earn that commission that somebody else is paying, but you're willing to go through the process and work with them so that they do earn that commission at the end of the day by completing the purchase of your first home. So just some kind of basic information, but something I don't think is actually articulated out there in the marketplace right now on how buyers pay their agent as you go through the transaction process. So again, this is Lewis Collins, ERA Old South Properties. I'd love to hear some feedback. If you have any additional questions or additional comments about some of these videos that I'm putting up, please feel free to comment, share, whatever the case may be. I love to get some feedback on what type of content you guys are looking to hear. And as I come up with different questions or different scenarios that I think may be pertinent to, educating the public or providing some additional insight on, what the real estate transaction process is like, I'll be sure to put that out there and share it freely. So again, Lewis Collins, ERA Old South Properties. You can always visit me at www.realestateguy.org, or you can send me a text or call me anytime at 850-748-1393. Look forward to hearing back from you guys.